It is 10:18 a.m. Mountain Standard Time, October 31st, 2030 or 2023 rather. Um Again, in that I say that because my files have been my personal files. I haven't noticed it so much on YouTube, but I honestly haven't been paying as close attention to the YouTube time date stamps. But like my personal files have been different time state, like serious difference, like like 6 months or even a year, uh, uh, where my personal files have been, the dates have been changed. However, um, I woke up in the middle of the night because there's this some kind of product being talked about, the gummies, the weight loss gummies and whatnot. And Oprah Winfrey sponsors them and whatnot. And I think, um, again, just because Oprah Winfrey sponsors something or endorses something doesn't make it end all be all. Not in my world anyway. Um, um, so it's strange the videos, because there's a really overweight and I'm not trying to be funny here, assumed female, because this part in time in my life, you never know about anybody, and like my grandmother used to say that when I was young. So I don't know what my grandmother, Helen Henderson, knew that I didn't all those years ago, like in my early 20s. However, here I am saying it, um 30 years, 30 years, 36, 2 decades almost here in the future since then. Um but I keep wondering, like, what it is that they, because they're calling it gummies, but I don't know if it's maybe they're black gummies. I don't know, because one frame shows them different color and shows the gummies, and then but when they're eating it, they hold it in their hand like really close so you can't see, but it looks like some kind of black something or other, and they go like this, and it's, to me, it's really strange how they present it. um and it's not something, I'm not someone who I, I don't look for weight loss, magical solutions. um However, I'm having a really difficult time, and I think part of it has to do with being residing in high altitude. I know it does, because I know just from since I moved to Colorado that is significantly more difficult to keep weight off in Colorado because of the high altitude. For me, it is anyway. I would assume that it is for a number of other people also. Um, I get a lot of swelling and water retention, um, more so um, than in lower altitudes. Um, so there's different variations, different variables that I myself am trying to uh, identify within. And it's frustrating when you're someone who's, at one time in your life, for a rather long period of time in my life, I was really very fit. And um and that would have been from the time before I moved to Colorado, starting like the year before, when I started a really serious um focus on getting healthy. And it didn't have to do with anyone else. It had to do with, gosh, I just am so, tired of. And I was probably like 150 pounds, 5'5". I'm still 5'5". I may have lost an inch or two since that was when um I'm trying to give an estimate of how many years ago that was. Like 30, ironically, 33 years ago or thereabouts. Um, when I first decided, and I was residing with my first daughter, and she was just exiting toddlerhood and entering into preschool age. And and I'm trying to think. She was on her bicycle, and we would, similar to riding around like the following year. Um, and I would jog, and she could keep up on her training wheel bicycle, because I didn't jog very fast. Even then, I didn't jog very fast, and now I jog even slower. So, um, uh, it's funny because I know my daughter gets frustrated with me, and I'm not laughing at her. I'm laughing at myself, and this being a thing, um, like an interference in our relationship, that it feels like neither one of us really has control of. And so I jogged, and she rode and this was when I was still with her father. And why I'm telling this story this far back, when this is not even the topic. The topic is farming. Um um but when I woke up in the middle of the night this past evening, I was thinking about that again, because I'm like, okay, what is it? What are they eating? Because they're showing in one frame like different color gummies, like rainbow color gummies. But then when they're eating it, to me, it looks like they're holding something black, and like they're trying to hide it as they're eating it. And so I thought to myself, gosh, that's so strange. I remember that one time. And then I started thinking about when I was a little girl, like 12 or 13 years old. And I used to, or maybe like 10 years old, because I think it was that when we were resigning at 1657 Woodburn Avenue. And maybe I just don't want to admit that the behavior carried into 612 Yorkshire Drive. And that was that I would eat the ashes from the ashtray where Jean and Charlotte smoked cigarettes. And I'm laughing again at myself. And no one else has permission to laugh at me because this. I've been made fun of myself, and I can laugh at myself at my own behavior. Um um so when I woke from my sleep, I thought to myself, gosh, I wonder if they're eating ashes, like maybe they're taking chunks of charcoal and adding a little bit of water, and that's what it is. And then I started thinking about when I worked at Franklin Square Hospital in the inpatient pharmacy, and then charcoal having to do with the treatment of like a counterbalancing of chemotherapy on a more serious subject. So I have a what I call a burn pot, and I know that is a practice, like that terminology is used in another culture. Um, and I use it to burn, not really sage, because um, I use it really to burn lint from the dryer, and hair from the brush, from my hairbrush that I take out of my hairbrush mostly, because someone had gone into a trance and said, "I'll have that hair," and because of a accident that I was in, that I've talked about the day before my first day of my senior year at Jocktown High School in 1981. Um, so it's not really a mystical thing, although those from the Royal Order of the Mystics who practice, they practice black magic. They're always there's always, as I talked about yesterday, as I discussed yesterday, there's always a claim on your salvation whenever you practice something close, or you exercise a behavior something close to what another culture does. And again, I invite my Lord and Savior Jesus in, and to keep them from claiming my practices to any dark forces. um so that's what I use my burn pot for, because I experience, first of all, there's different tribes that, the cultural battles that have gone back and haven't been talked about, that I've discussed, um of Genghis Khan, and they're not as talked about for whatever reason. It's like they need them to be secret battles or something. But those battles are emerging in my life, and they first began to emerge in my life in Aberdeen, Maryland, in 2016, 17, thereabouts. Um, so the person who said went into a trance, like literally went into a trance in my presence, and said, "I have that head," um, and with his head just like this, uh, is is recognizable as lineage to like Genghis Khan, or although a much thinner version, and Genghis Khan, or Attila the Hun. And I've talked about people who call me Hun, and uh, even before I had a conscious realization of what a Hun was or is in history, and the fact that, to bring this to surface, um, Dundalk, Maryland, there was a brick and mortar, and cement, um, neighborhood, and it was mostly blonde hair, blue eyed people. I remember, and they called them, they called each other Hun. They used the word Hun a lot. And then, of course, the word Hun has been used in a, which what one would assume as a endearing term of affection. When you take a closer look, you realize that it isn't. And when someone calls me Hun, so initially, before I realized the Attila the Hun connection to my Scandinavian lineage, um, before I realized that connection, I didn't like being called Hun anyway. like you go to the grocery store and the cashier calls you hun. I'm immediately, I don't care what color the skin is of the person calling me hun. That's not the issue. The issue is, to me, that's been used as an endearing, affectionate, personal terminology. And so I immediately, I'm not your hun. Okay, don't call me hun. We're not on that level. And to go a little further in the conversation, I don't use those types of endearing. I don't use nicknames very much. Again, here's the beau coming at me, the clown's beau. Um, and that's my personal right. I don't have to accept someone calling me hun. And then there's the further realization more recently, uh, during that I have your hair thing. Um, and the fact that I've talked about the case of Vlad um, in Romania. And no one has ever put forth a different angle on that. But I thought to myself when I looked at the one painting of Vlad, I thought to myself, just something doesn't seem right with this. I don't know what it is. And as I've also talked about, there was a man in like within that was around the same time, and we all frequented the same things because we were all assumed homeless. I was homeless, and I don't know what was going on with the other people, if they had secret abodes somewhere and only came out for at night to present themselves as homeless, whatever they were doing. I don't know, but I actually was. And so I went to the A New Day establishment, which functioned as a recovery center uh, and a day shelter for homeless. In other words, you didn't have to be in drug recovery to attend. You had to be either homeless or seeking a recovery um, uh, from, I think, a specific drug addiction, or maybe not specific. It was anyway. So there was a much older man, like probably, and he was very frail and and he looked like Vlad, and not Vlad Putin, Vlad the historical. I'm not going to say that word. Um, and also this uh, representative, I can clearly see resemblance of this other person to the Mongolian tribe, which would either be would the I'm fairly certain that Genghis Khan and Attila the Hun were both of the Mongolian tribe. And I was just like, something just is not setting right with this the vampire story. And so started doing very surface research, and it didn't take much to discover that there was, and I can't remember which battle was within Vlad's reign of in Romania. But either Attila the Hun or Genghis Khan, whichever I think was the more recent, because I think there's like a century or two difference in those two in those two uh, I don't like to use the word reign with them, reigns of terror. Um, and so with whichever one was the more recent and took place simultaneous with Vlad from Romania. And so now here I'm a homeless person walking really very close with Jesus, and um and seeing this, and it was actually the man who resembled Vlad sitting on the, excuse me, sofa. I just ate and drank 2 cups of coffee, so I drank too much coffee, and um, it was him who was sitting on the sofa at the Welcome One shelter when I looked over and could see Jesus's from floor to ceiling, crying like torrents of tears. And so I started to think even more like something is not right, because here is this man, and they called him Pops, and I don't know what his actual real time experience was, but what I realize is that Jesus comes through where there's question. So the fact that this persona Pops had a facial and physical resemblance to Vlad from those centuries ago in Romania, I don't know if Jesus was crying because of what he did. This is another, if you want to say, angle, or if that story's, if he was crying because this man was misrepresented, which makes more sense to me. And um throughout history, and that it was Genghis Khan or Attila the Hun, again, whichever one of those rulers was representing the Mongolians in the more recent years. There was a battle or war that whereby Mongolia and Romania were involved in battle. So I started to question what really happened. Is it possible that Vlad went out in because he, even in the painting, he seems like such a very, and I don't want reference to Jeremy Kilpatrick while I'm telling this story, because the person I know as Jeremy Kilpatrick looks more like a short version of, or I assume short, of John Lennon and Oppenheimer. Um, and this person who went by the name Pops, like it looked exactly like Vlad. Um, so I started to question, like, and I researched, okay, like, what the heck, what battles were taking place? So I found the information that Mongolia and Romania at that time had engaged in battle. And for some reason, there's something popped up on my thing in front of my uh, now I'm not even touching my keyboard, and something. popped up. But anyway, um, so I began to ask the question as to whether it was possible that Vlad went out either on a hunt to get food for his family, because it just seemed like he was a much more meek persona in his personal life. Like, to to look at just that one painting, and I've looked for paintings of him, and can only find that one representation. So I've started to say, what if he like went out hunting to get a castle and came back, um, their weaponry, which they are historically shown as using, and Vlad came back to his castle, and his family was um, uh, 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 posted up on stakes in the front of his castle. So, like, he was shocked to come, and then here he carried this cross now throughout history, because the story was told in opposite of the way it actually happened. And to me, it makes logical sense, and certainly considering when you begin to realize I have a much more clear picture of war strategies than I ever had when I was younger. Because again, when I was younger, I I'm not a war person. I don't. I don't. I never found the need to look for how I'm going to go out through my day and conduct my day. But again, I was held by my Lord and Savior Jesus, I truly believe, until my mind emotionally and intellectually could handle uh, such things as war, and having a more logical, not comprehensive, but logical um, understanding of it, really the stupidity of war, and how, and a person with any kind of objective onlooking of all the strategies. And I first noticed this when I was watching a show about the Knights of Templar, where the guy was going in every country and bringing to surface how different armies moved from country to country and location to location. I thought to myself, um, so, like, really, every army has used the exact same strategy. Every army throughout history: invade, rape, pillage. That's all it is. And I'm smiling at the stupidity of it. And and so how I got so far off the topic of farming, I don't know. I truly don't know how I got so far off the topic of farming, because all I really wanted to do was talk about when I woke up in the middle of my sleep, and started thinking about whether they were eating charcoal, and then talking about the treatment and the counterbalance of uh treatment of chemotherapy with charcoal, as in they would, I don't know how they administered it, but I know the charcoal came in an IV bag. I know because I worked in the pharmacy, in the inpatient pharmacy. Um, so I woke up thinking, what the heck? I wonder if they're eating charcoal. And so I went in and I had my burn pot, and that's how I got on the topic, because of talking about a practice that um, to ward off dark spirits. Um, and so part of what was in my burn pot at that I had just burned some lint from the dryer, and I know that there was some of my hair from my hairbrush, and there was a banana peel in there. So I took the banana peel out, thinking, I wonder how that uh, potassium, if it stays, whatever, if it has any nutrients after burning it. But the banana peel burned to a charcoal, although it still had some shape. So that's what I ingested, the banana, the charcoaled banana peel that I had burned in my burn pot. And so I can't, I didn't wake up this morning with miraculous weight loss. Um, but then I started thinking about the benefit to the farming issue, or the farming before invasional regulation. Um, I'm trying to think of the exact word that I wanted to use. By local government on farming. I know that farmers used to burn their fields at the end after harvesting, and obviously they were controlled burns. Um, and you start to realize that all of the regulations that have taken liberties from American citizens and residents are really, and have been, counterproductive to healthy living. Some of them, not all of them, some of them. Um, uh, and that being one, because I think intuitively that the burning of the farm fields after harvesting attended to two things. It attended to insects that after harvesting, and they and they the top of the top layer, whether they churned it up or not before obviously um uh heavy equipment was used, they would have to wait until, or depending on what the farmer might not have been able to afford, top of the line technology of having whatever they call it that goes out, and they drive out into the field to churn up and chop up the the post harvest corn stalks, or whatever the residual plant. um and they would have to wait for that to dry and then burn, and then and what that would attend to, the burning of that after it dried, would attend to the insects that had accumulated uh, within the growth process of the crop, and then the drying process of the post harvesting material. And it would also attend to and be turned up or added to the soil as enrichment of the soil after the residual material was burned. And so regulation and stuff like that took that freedom from the farmer, and that's counterintuitive to like what I was saying, to a healthy rejuvenation of the soil, and a healthy elimination of insects. And now we have a huge problem, whether local, county, or state government chooses to advertise in a serious manner the need to attend to insect control, because there's so many cute little arguments about oh well, that's not I forget the word they use. I'm like, you know what, we got giant freaking spiders and some bugs that I've never seen before emerging with all this construction work and deep digging into the soil. And don't argue, please, with me about whether the insecticide is a natural thing. I know that there are healthy ways of, and particularly when the person I'm thinking about engaged in an argument with me and assumed that I wasn't using appropriate insecticide in the first place, and I was. Um, um, so those little stupid little battles that turn into bigger battles because egos get involved, and long-standing members of the ladies garden club and all this other absurd stuff, um it, and you're not even supposed to talk about Rocky Mountain spotted fever. um and the need for funding, like serious funding and attention to overgrowth uh, and old trees that aren't healthy anymore. They might still be producing green, but they're too old and they need to be cut down. And I've talked about this before too. Um, the big story in the Boulder, the local what is it called? The camera. I can't even think of what the local newspaper's called. It's pretty obscure, and uh, uh, but the big huge article about an old 100-year-old tree or something, that there was a big debate about whether it should be cut down or not. And I'm like, yeah, it should be cut down. I didn't go to the meeting, obviously, but I'm thinking as I'm reading the article, it's not only one tree that should be cut down that's 100 years or older, because I'm hearing that like the walnut trees, and I'm pretty sure they're walnut trees. Um, like some of the walnut trees are petrifying, that, and they're so big around, which their wood, if they get cut down, the wood is going to be absolutely beautiful. If it's not complete, it doesn't seem like it's like termite infested or anything. Some of them might be, I don't know, but the wood is going to be absolutely beautiful. And those trees produce energy, and those trees are stored energy. uh and and so there's all this rejuvenation that people are spending on ridiculous arguments, and there's rejuvenation that can be being done instead of arguing about the heart that's 100-year-old tree and it's been in this neighborhood for da 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 da. And as long as we're arguing about this, have you noticed that as long as you're arguing about 100-year-old tree over here, all this brush over here is like collecting ticks, and ticks are growing, and spiders are growing bigger, and da 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 da. Um, it- because I'd rather cut the tree down, release allow the energy, the natural energy to be released, um, and then move forward with some setting up a place where saplings can start to grow, like, in a greenhouse. And we can start rejuvenation growth process within a greenhouse, and then go and uh hand out hazmat suits, because I know I wouldn't go out in any of this landscaping by the creeks and stuff um without the best I can describe is a hazmat suit, a completely contained suit where I'm not going to get infested with ticks, because first of all, I feel like I'm already infested with ticks just from being homeless and being out in um eh, eh, so to start, you know redirecting some funding to the from the ridiculous building industry into some more needed areas of attention. um I think to disempower all the garden ladies and the well, my great grandmother was the head of the garden club, and you're not going to tell me what to do and blah blah blah. You're not going to tell me that that tree needs to be cut down, because my great great grandmother was the head of the garden club here in Boulder. The first time I noticed that trees have stored energy is when I was in Bel Air I was still homeless. It's before I attained residence at uh, Harford Family House in Aberdeen in 2018. Uh, Approximately 8 months before I came back to Colorado. And I was walking up one of the neighborhood roads, and someone had cut a big, huge tree down that was in front of their house. And the trunk was probably like 2.5 feet in diameter. And just it was freshly cut down. And I went and stood on it just because I have respect for trees. And as I stood there, it was like, beam me up, Scotty. Because, like, suddenly I had this, like, really surge of really good energy that I feel moving through my body. And I knew it was coming from the earth and from the tree. And, um, and so trees have stored energy. And to cut them down is a good thing for human health and for the release of good energy into the air. And and that's my input as far as local, state, and government regulations that have increasingly taken the liberties from youth, um, and liberties of their own logical thinking. Um, and I am much younger than the people who I'm speaking of, who have taken uh, my intellect via and always fighting to get back, um, on behalf of myself and my children. Because as I've talked about, I also know, believe, and know without a doubt that my children, 20 years apart, were born more intelligent than me. And I consider myself to be a fairly intelligent person. I'm not like, the smartest person in the world or anything. And really, my intelligence comes from emotional intelligence and being able to have patience and assess things in an objective uh, manner. And um, and my children's intelligence is and involves even a different level. My intelligence of emotional intelligence is contained within my children's existence, but then my children have an even broader, as I've talked about, um, technical intelligence than I had. Mine is always a more feet on the ground intelligence, and my children were born with increasing exponential increase of emotional intelligence and technical intelligence. And um, and I just needed to attend to that because I woke up in the middle of the night wondering what the heck that weight loss thing was.